Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, let's talk about all the books that I DNF'd or did not finish in 2021. Wanted to make this video was actually because a lot of these books are really well liked and a lot of people love them. So the reason that I didn't finish them may actually be a reason that you end up wanting to pick one up. I'm going to go in the order of books where I DNF'd it earliest to latest. So the number of pages read was the least number to the most number of pages read. I hope that makes sense. Let's get started. All right, I think the book that I DNF'd with the least number of pages read was Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. So this book has a gorgeous cover and a really wonderful premise where it follows this small town and a girl washes up on the shores of this small village, and the people take in this girl and realize that she's passed away. But sometime in the night, she actually comes back to life. And the way it's written is why I DNF'd it. So the way it's written is each chapter you're kind of following different people's perspectives, and some of them are not even a part of this village, some of them are far off, and you're kind of following all these separate people in these different places. And I'm assuming that as you continue on reading this book, they all kind of come together and you realize how everything's connected. The problem was the writing style for me. This was beautifully written, I can definitely see that. It just was a little too lyrical of writing for my personal taste, and I've realized that it's really hard for me to connect to books that are executed in this way because I have a really hard time connecting to characters. This one I decided was just not for me at around page 70, I think, and that's probably the earliest I've DNF'd a book. I just knew that the writing style, it wasn't going to work for me, but I've heard that if you like that type of writing, if you like those types of stories, this one's a gorgeous one and a lot of people love it. So you may actually really like this. All right, the next one, oh my God. The next one I DNF'd at around, I think 90 pages. And it is The Troop by Nick Cutter. So I had heard so many fantastic things about this book, and it's a horror, adult horror, about this group of boys in the Boy Scouts camp, and they're out camping in the wilderness, and this man approaches their camp who is like very sickly. Something is wrong with this man, and they don't know what's wrong with him. They kind of take him in and are trying to figure out what the heck is wrong. It is the most disgusting type of horror that I just can't do. I can't do it. I can't do body horror. I have discovered that this is not the type of horror that is for me. I don't like it. I don't like weird things happening to people's bodies. I don't like it. Anything that's not supposed to be in a person's body and is like moving around in there, nope, I can't do it. So I am way too squeamish for this type of horror. If you like body horror, apparently this is a fantastic version of it, and a lot of people love this book. I just couldn't do it. It had nothing to do with the writing. I was really liking the writing. I was really liking the character work. Maybe you like that kind of stuff. Check out The Troop if you do. Okay, the next book I DNF'd. I DNF'd it like just over 100 pages in, I think. I forget exactly where. It's The Tower of Swallows by Andrezj Sapkowski. Okay, what I've discovered about the Witcher series, I really enjoyed the 2 short story collections prior to the full-length Witcher novels. Really enjoyed them. I loved following Geralt and Dandelion on their adventures. Once we got into the actual novels, the Witcher series no longer is about the Witcher. He kind of takes a back seat in the series and becomes a less major character, and I did not like that. I like Geralt. That is the reason I like The Witcher. Geralt is a fantastic character. Dandelion's a fantastic character. I love their dynamic. I don't love Ciri. I don't love Yennefer. I don't love any of the other characters. I like Geralt. When I discovered that the full-length novels don't really follow Geralt, I was very disappointed. I will say I had an okay time with the first book, and then I really didn't like the second book, And then I really liked Baptism of Fire. Baptism of Fire was my favorite of the full-length novels, and I think it's because we had the most Geralt in that one. Then I realized Tower of Swallows. Geralt, where's Geralt? He's nowhere. I'm sure he is going to come in the novel. I just didn't care anymore because I didn't care about Ciri. I didn't care about anything else going on in this world. I just wanted to see what Geralt was up to. And that's not what these books are about. And that's okay. The way it's written is also really hard for me to connect to because the way the story's told is from like all of these side characters' perspectives. So you're really never in the head of your main characters, or you're very seldom in their head. And I really didn't like that way of telling the story because, again, like it gives me no opportunity to connect to our main characters. So I really didn't like the way that this was written. I just found it extremely dull. Like my eyes would glaze over when we had these long paragraphs about like all these places, and I just couldn't keep track of the world. And so I was just not feeling it, and I knew I wasn't gonna like Tower of Swallows. I've heard that the last book in the series is not the best, so I was like, no more. I didn't enjoy my reading experience at all. I liked Baptism of Fire. I liked the short story collections. I'm glad I read those, but I was done with it. I was done. So I'm sorry if you're a huge Witcher fan, but yeah, I just was not connecting, and I just want more Geralt. He's the best. All right, the next one that I DNF'd was just shy of 200 pages in, I think, and it is More Than This by Patrick Ness. So this one, this is the second book by Patrick Ness I have DNF'd. I love A Monster Calls by this author. I love the Chaos Walking trilogy by this author. Like, so good. So I was going to assume that Patrick Ness was an author after reading all those books by him. And unfortunately, what I'm realizing is I really don't like when he leans more into like contemporary. Like I DNF'd Burn, and that one was kind of a fantasy, but it was taking place in our real world, and it read more like a YA contemporary to me rather than a fantasy. So I realized I don't love that. And then this one, More Than This, I think has this cool like sci-fi dystopian twist to it. However, the first like 200 pages or 150 pages or whatever it is, what I read of this book reads like, again, a YA contemporary, and it takes forever for the story to get going. We just follow a character who thinks he's dead, wakes up in this world where there's no one around, he has no idea where he is, he's trying to figure out where in the heck he is, and it just like focused on like the most mundane things. We had flashbacks of kind of his like life before dying and all of that, and I just was not loving it at all. I was like, this is not what I was expecting. I have heard, I know my good friend Jade from Bedtime Bookworm, she really likes this book and told me that I like stopped right before the cool stuff started. And to be honest, I kind of have an idea, I think, of what is going on, and I just was not interested enough to keep going. The main character I wasn't a huge fan of. It just, I don't know that I like Patrick Ness's storytelling when it leans into like the YA contemporary feel. And I decided that if he writes anything that is like full-on fantasy or dystopian like he did with Chaos Walking, or like the middle grade feeling like A Monster Calls, those books, oh my gosh, I will definitely pick those up. But if they sound like they're gonna kind of lean towards YA contemporary, I probably won't pick them up. It's not my favorite. So unfortunately, that one did not work for me. And I know that someone in the comments will probably be like, oh, but you missed it. You missed the coolest part. And I know it gets super cool. I know that there's this twist that happens. I know once you figure out what's going on, it's probably super cool. But again, I just was not connecting at all to the story at that point and just didn't have any interest. The next one I DNF'd was just shy, I think, of halfway through the book. And that was Bloody Rose by Nicholas Eames. So this one for me, I really enjoyed Kings of the Wild, the first book in this series, which follows, you know, this ragtag group of guys that are past their prime who have to have one last hurrah to go save one of their daughters. And it's this really funny group of guys who I really enjoyed reading about. I really liked all of their characters a lot. And I just thought it was a fun time. It like didn't take itself too seriously. It was just a fun time. What I realized reading Bloody Rose was I don't necessarily love the world building in these stories. It really was just the characters in Kings of the Wild that I enjoyed the most, but I didn't love like the world building part of it. And this one follows a totally different group of characters. You're kind of following the daughter that is in the first book. You're following her and her group as they go on this adventure. And it feels very aimless in the first half of the book because they don't have a clear objective. You're kind of just following them as they pick up a new bard, and the new bard is kind of telling their story as they go on these little adventures. And it feels kind of meandering, like there's not like a clear cut, this is what we're working towards, like the first book had. And it just had a lot of those world building details that I just didn't care about. I wasn't liking any of the characters really. So this one was one that I realized, like, I liked Kings of the Wild for what it was. I liked those characters, but I don't love this world enough to follow characters that I don't love in it, if that makes sense. So I DNF'd Bloody Rose. I don't plan on picking up the third book in this series either. I'm gonna kind of just leave it at Kings of the Wild and enjoy that for what it is. I think it can definitely stand on its own and can read as a standalone. The next book I DNF'd was actually a very shocking DNF for me, and it is a Desolation called Peace by Arkady Martine. So this is the sequel to a memory called Empire, and I really enjoyed that sci-fi novel. The way it was written was very intricate, it was very dense, it was very confusing. You like had to be in the right mood in order to enjoy it because it can get very confusing. The world building is very intricate. So if you're not in the right mood for it, I don't think it totally works. Fortunately, when I read the first book, I was in the mood and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought the world building was super cool and unique. The technology that it was introducing was really cool. I loved the characters. And the second book I thought I was going to love because it has kind of this first contact story to it, and it also follows like multiple perspectives that we didn't get in the first book. We only follow one perspective in the first book. So I thought I was going to really, really enjoy this one, and I had heard that it was even better than the first book. Unfortunately, like I was saying before, if you're not in the right mood for this, it's very easy to get lost, and I just picked it up at a time where I was not in the mood. And I got like halfway through, realized I didn't know what was going on. It just didn't have that same feeling that I had with the first book where I was really connecting to the characters. I really didn't care about any of the new ones that we were introduced to. The first contact story is it's a slow build. Like it takes a while to get there, and I just was not feeling it. I was not feeling this writing style. This is the only book on this list that I do plan on trying again in the future because I think I will like this if I'm in the right mood for it. So this is one I'm keeping around and I'm going to give another try. All right, now let's get into two books that I was pretty darn close to finishing and then just didn't. And I'll tell you why. So the first one, I got a little bit further with the last one, so I'll talk about this next one first. The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. Oh my God. This was another buddy read with Elle from Elliot Brooks. We had this as a buddy read in March, and I had had such a bad time with the first buddy read for January, and then February we read Legendborn, and I enjoyed Legendborn. And then we picked up Bone Ships in March, and oh my God, I was really not liking this. Like, I did not like the writing style. I felt like every other word was some like nautical reference that I just did not get at all. I really didn't like the characters. I felt like none of them were really developed at all. Like I was not liking it. And oh my God, I went to Elle and I was like, I really don't want to have to push through this book like we did with Ruin of Kings, and like, again, not like it at all. Like, I just don't want to do it. So I did finally DNF this one, and I pushed through for so long because it was one of our buddy reads, and I just was like getting madder and madder at the book as I went on, and I'm so glad I DNF'd it, because it would not have gotten a good rating from me. I did not like this at all. I have heard that R.J. Barker's other trilogy, starting with Age of Assassins, is good. Like, it's a totally different kind of feel. So I do want to check that one out. It's not that I'm writing this author off forever, but I think the problem, I don't think I like seafaring adventures. I love the idea of like pirates and like ships and journeying on the sea, and this book has made me so afraid of those types of stories. Like, I don't think I like those stories. So that is something, like, again, super subjective, super personal to me. If you love those types of stories, this may be awesome for you. And the last book on this list, and one that I was so close to finishing, but something happened where I just couldn't continue, and it's Clay's Arc by Octavia E. Butler. This is one that is the third in the Pattern Master series, and I have really enjoyed Wild Seed and Mind of My Mind. Mind of My Mind was one of my almost favorites of 2021. It was really, really good. So I was very excited to continue on in this series. Clay's Arc follows what feels like a completely different story. I think why it's in the same series as the previous two books is because the themes that it explores have a lot of overlap with the previous books. However, we're following a completely different storyline, completely different characters, like a totally different problem than the previous books had. I was liking a lot of the story and the themes and all of that, and something just, it got too dark at one point. I don't want to say anything because it could be a spoiler, I guess, but the problem with it is that it explores this kind of group of people who have been exposed to this alien virus, and it causes them to do things that they wouldn't normally think about doing, and it makes them very aggressive towards others. It was just too dark for me. Like, I can pretty much tolerate almost anything besides body horror, as we've discussed before. But this one just kind of went a little too far with something between like a father and daughter, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. So yeah, this one is just not for me. It's just a little too dark for my personal taste. And I don't know if I can read the fourth book without reading the third book. I'll have to find that out to see if maybe I can still read the fourth book and enjoy it, since each of these books in the Pattern Master series is kind of its own contained story. But this one is not for me. So those were all the books that I DNF'd in 2021. What were some of the books that you didn't finish in 2021? I would love to know, so leave those comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye.